that's right here in our city, that you all may or may not know about. So hopefully you'll get some new learning in, have some new experiences, and really see what the Cylburn Arboretum has to offer. Obviously, I'm outside, so just give us a little bit of grace if the audio gets a little low or the video gets a little delayed or something like that. We do have some things in place to hopefully minimize that. But if that happens, just give us a little grace. We'll try to get things back up and running. This is being recorded today. So for any students, teachers who are here or aren't here who want to view this later on, you'll have an opportunity to do that. So don't worry, I'll be sure to email this out to you after the event. A few more housekeeping things before we officially get started. And you see other things just besides my face. One is I want to give a special shout out to so many of the schools and so many teachers and so many people who reached out today about this event. We had upward of 500 students who were registered to participate. The last time I checked, we had maybe 200 who are already on, and it's probably more than that at this point with more folks trickling in. So thank you all so much for responding to the call, for signing up, for getting your students here. Thank you students for being here. We have mostly elementary and middle school students, but shout out to our high school students as well who are also in attendance. For this event, unfortunately, we won't have closed captioning. I know that could be difficult for folks, we'll have masks on and things like that, but in the future, that's something that we are strongly considering adding on to many of our events, just because we know that would be a helpful aid to our students, as well as other folks who attend. Let me see what else. I think that's all I wanted to start with. So again, you're at the virtual field trip for the Cylburn Arboretum. I'm going to start by passing it over to some other folks here who helped bring this event together so they can introduce themselves. But tune in. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We have other members of the work-based learning team. Shout out to my team who's here. They'll be responding to your questions in the chat and monitoring that as well. So just be sure to tune in. Lastly, one more thing I wanted to mention. There are optional worksheets. So teachers, when you were registering, on that page, there were optional worksheets for different grade levels. So if you want your students to complete those, feel free to share them if you haven't already. They don't need to be submitted to us. We won't be grading any worksheets at all, but make sure that you share those out with your students if you are interested. I do want to do a quick check. Can someone on my team let me know if you can hear me? Am I sounding clear? Is everything looking good?
All clear, Albert. We can see you and we can hear you. This looks great.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I'm going to flip it over so we can get some introductions in. Give me 1 second. All right, here we go. Oh. There we go. Can you just introduce the people to who you are and what you do here?
Sure. I'm Patricia Foster, and I am the Executive Director of the Cylburn Arboretum Friends. We are the folks that partner with the City of Baltimore in recreation and parks and providing beautiful gardens and taking care of the trees and shooing the deer and lots of other things, too numerous to mention. And we're so happy that you're here today to take a virtual tour of our Arboretum. We hope that will encourage you to come by in person. We're not so far. 4915 Green Spring Avenue, and it's all free.
Thank you so much. As you can see, she's riding a cart that we'll be riding in a moment. So thank you for that. All right, so I'm gonna pass it over to another member who helped to bring this together. Can you just introduce the people to who you are and what you do here?
Sure, thanks, Mr. Phillips. I'm Heather Rosenthal. I'm the Director of Community Engagement here for Cylburn Arboretum Friends. So we're, as Mrs. Foster said, we're the Friends group. And so I would be the person that you might see in your school with an education coordinator helping reach out to different principals in the schools. You can also reach out to me to make sure that we can get you here in person one day. I also help with membership here at the Arboretum. I help do fundraisers. I help run events at the Arboretum. So I help put on the parties. And also, what else do I do?
She does a lot.
I help Mr. Phillips get this curriculum together for you. So welcome. We're so happy you're here.
Absolutely. Very pivotal part of this. Thank you so much. And we have one more member we're going to introduce you to.
So I'm Mr. Big. I am the head gardener here. So I work on the grounds, making sure the place is beautiful. And if any of you ever decide to come volunteer with me, you'll be working with me in the gardens. And you'll hear more from me later.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right, so we have everyone introduced. We're actually going to get in the cart, right? We're going to make our way over to the Cylburn mansion. So you all just hang out with me. We're going to be riding together on this ride. Can I put my bag back here? Okay. All right. I'm gonna flip the camera around so you all just won't just be looking at me the whole time. Here we go. And we're at the Baltimore Center. That's where we started at. So once you get here, that's probably where you would start
This
as
will
well.
make it go off. Huh? All right, here we go. Hold on
All
to
right.
your hat.
I'm holding on.
We're gonna get an introduction of what you're gonna see in Cylburn. And we're leaving the building we just pulled away from is the visitor center.
Albert, maybe if you can hold your camera closer to the person's mouth because we can't hear her as maybe because of the wind.
Got it. Is that a little bit
I'm gonna
better?
pull my mask off. That's right.
We can hear her better now. Yes, thank you. And
Okay.
just so you know, you're up to 649 participants.
Wow.
Great.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Barbara.
And we're going up a road called Mansion Way. And this roadway will lead to the mansion where the people who originally owned this arboretum, wasn't an arboretum then, first lived. And so you can see all the beautiful trees. Everything is green. We've had lots of rain this spring.
It's beautiful.
And everything is smiling and happy to see you. Some of you may recognize the butterflies over here. They are a sign of a safe walk to the Arboretum from Ginkgo. There's some folks out walking and enjoying this beautiful day.
How you doing?
Some of these trees have been here for more than 100 years.
100 years, wow.
And this tree ahead on the left side of the driveway is a ginkgo, which is really our kind of logo, our signed tree. And that's one of the original plantings on the property.
Yes.
Those are Chinese French trees.
Chinese French trees. Beautiful.
Maybe called French. Coming up to more lawn. And we're coming up to the mansion and some small memorial gardens that are planted over here. Right straight ahead of us.
Yep. Right in front of here are those gardens.
Right. 200 acres total for the property.
200 acres. Wow.
There are 50 acres that are cultivated like this. And there are then 150 acres in the woodland. And there are 3.8 miles of trails in that woodland. We can see some lions ahead of us. And your history professor is coming up.
Albert, would you like us to ask questions as they're coming in from students, or would you like us to hold them?
Because I
That's a
have
great
a few,
question.
Albert.
If you have a couple questions, we can get some in now.
So one I have is, what is an arboretum? I don't know if that's been answered already.
That's a great question.
Great question.
What's an arboretum?
It's basically a tree museum. There are 2,000, more than 2,000, closer to 3,000 woody plants and trees in the Arboretum that we have cataloged. So There's all different kinds, and many of them are planted in collections. So you can go and visit lots of different kinds of maple trees, lots of different kinds of the maple tree collection.
Oh, this is a maple trees right over here.
Thanks for
Nice.
saying that, because that'll lead into the next
And
question I
there are
have.
magnolias, and there are hollies, and it's just like almost you went into a library and you went
Yeah.
to the history section or you went to the science section.
Mhm.
That's how they're planted here.
Got it.
So-
I think we
Speaking
have
of
one more
trees-
question.
Oh,
Oh, what's your question, Shamara?
because she was talking about trees, and then the Q&A, someone wants to know if you have cherry trees.
You have cherry
We
trees.
do have cherry trees. They are ornamental cherry trees. But there are many different kinds, and we do have a collection of cherry trees, but no non-fruiting.
So I was about to ask you if I could taste some.
Not yet, even if they did.
Not yet, not yet. So thank you so much for that. I'm just gonna grab my bag real quick, and we're gonna get a quick history lesson from another member of the staff here. Can you just introduce the people to who
Hi,
you are and what
everybody.
you do?
So my name is Rebecca Henry, and I used to be a history teacher, but now I'm the head of the Friends Group. So the group that helps the city take care of this property. But because I was a history teacher, I've been exploring the history of this place. We don't know much about the early history. We do know that it was a farm, which is sort of hard to imagine because you see all these trees now. But at one point there were crops growing here, horses, pigs, cows, chickens. And they say that because we're at the top of a hill, at one point when you looked that way, you could actually see the harbor.
Wow.
But now the trees have grown up.
Yeah, I was say you can't see it
and-
now.
no, and the buildings have grown up. So even if the trees weren't here, you still wouldn't be able to see the harbor because of the buildings.
Mhm.
But so we know it was a farm, but we don't know much else. And then one of the things you learn about history is when somebody famous is involved, all of a sudden they get in the news and in the papers and stuff. And in 1861, that's wrong. 1861, long time ago, time of the Civil War, a man named Jesse Tyson bought this property. And he was not a farmer, but he was very wealthy. His family had a company making chemicals. And so when he bought it, all of a sudden, we can learn a lot because now it's in the papers. He's in the papers all the time. So he bought this property in 1861.
Wow.
And he inherited money from his father. His father died. He got a lot of money and he decided he was going to build a really nice house for he and his mother. So in 1863, he hired George Frederick, who was a 21-year-old architect who designed Baltimore City Hall. So if you look at City Hall, it's the same guy who did this building. There's the building. He hired him and he started building. But it took 26 years to build this house because, first of all, the Civil War. And then secondly, if we go over here.
We'll go around this
Sorry.
way. Jump around this cart. Here we go.
You see the size of these stones. These stones were from their quarry. And it was only about 5 miles away, the quarry. But when you think about it, the stones had to come in carts pulled by horses with wooden tires.
Wow.
So moving all of those stones all the way over here and then building this house took 26 years. He builds the house. He lives here. They build beautiful gardens here. And then
And what goes on inside of this building?
that's a good question. So the first floor of the house is used for rentals, for weddings, for photography shoots. They filmed some of, what was the TV show that they filmed here? I can't remember. Anyway, and then upstairs are our offices. And then Baltimore has a chief horticulturist. And so her offices are here because this ground is production, and you'll learn more about this. It's the production facility for all of Baltimore City. They grow all the things here. So the people who are in charge of growing things have their offices here.
Wonderful. Thank you
And
for
then,
that.
so anyway, the Tysons bought it, and then in 1942, the wife died, and the husband was like, "What am I going to do with all this land?" And so he sold it to the city, And they didn't know quite what to do with a big building in 1942. And so it became a home for, and I don't like this word, but a home for neglected children. And what it was is during the war, there were parents who had to go off to the war or had to work. And at one point, 45 children lived in this house.
Wow. It's a lot of children. But it's a pretty big house. So
Big house. And we've had people come back who lived here and they said it was a wonderful place to grow up. And they lived here until 1957. And in 1957, by that time, they didn't really need the space for the children. And so they turned it into the Baltimore City Wildflower and Garden Preserve. So it basically was a big gardening center in the city for people in the city to learn about plants and gardens, which is something we still do. But then in 1982, they said, oh, we don't have an arboretum, we need an arboretum. And they looked around, they looked at Leakin Park and various other parks, and they said, well, there are a lot of trees at Cylburn. So they called us an arboretum. So now, as Patricia just told you, our focus is not just on the gardens, but also on creating a place where people can learn about trees.
wow. Thank you for that history lesson. That was very, very informative. I'm gonna pause real quick. Are there any other questions that folks are asking maybe in the chat, Shamara or Barbara?
A lot of people are jealous and wish that they were there with you and are asking whether they can visit the house. And maybe there's a post-COVID answer, a now answer and a post-COVID answer.
Okay, that's a great question. So how's visitation when it comes to this house? Is that possible?
The house is mostly locked because it does have all these offices on the second floor and they have to protect all the things they have in the offices. But we do run tours. Actually, I run a history tour.
Okay.
And once COVID is over, it'll be on the website. The other thing is if somebody contacts us, the Friends group, we'll meet anybody here and take them inside. Once we are post-COVID, I love taking people inside and showing them what goes on in there.
Yes. And what's the best way for people to contact you?
If you look up Cylburn Arboretum, the website, we, the Friends, run the website. Even though the city owns the property, and it has information to contact us.
Got it. Thank you for that. Any other questions, Barbara, Shamara?
No, a lot of the questions have already been answered just in this little segment. Just so you know, you're the 773 participants.
Wow. Thank you for that update. We're over 700.
Wow, watching this?
Yes.
Wow, I'm a little intimidated.
Now you're famous, even if you didn't want to be.
So let's walk over to Fig.
Yeah, let's walk.
Who is our gardener. This is a beautiful garden that he takes care of.
Yes.
And it's a funny garden because there used to be a huge tree there and it fell down. So it used to be shady and now it's sunny.
Yeah, the last time last time I came here, I saw this. I was like, if I was a child, I would definitely be trying to climb on this.
Well, we do have children climbing.
I bet. We're back with Mr. Fig again.
Mr. Phillips. I just wanted to start here and talk about this tree. I was just counting the rings on it, and before you came up, I got to 70. And if you look at it, each one of these rings represents a year of growth. See how some are tight, some are spread out. So the ones that are spread out indicate that it grew really fast in that decade. And here they're really tight. So as it aged, it grew less and less every year. I got somewhere in here to about 70. So we know this is a pretty old tree. This is actually a spruce tree, a Norway spruce, which matches the one that kind of leaned over there. And it also matches those two tall evergreens in the back. So we're hoping to create a bench with this.
Yeah, it's a nice way, I guess, with recycling.
Yeah. So I'll just walk you through the gardens.
Okay.
And if you have any questions as we walk, just bring them up.
Got it.
So this is one of our gardens we call the circle garden. As you can see, there's a lot in bloom right now. If you come back to see us, even a week's time later, it's going to look completely different. So there will be a lot more things in bloom. A lot of things will not be in bloom. Gardens over here are part of the gardens here at Cylburn. So we we're not only an arboretum and a historic estate, but we're also a public garden. So an arboretum would be, as Ms. Foster indicated, a collection of trees, whereas when we collect herbaceous material and it's not tagged.
What's that word you just used?
Herbaceous.
What's that?
So anything herbaceous is a soft plant, right? So these have leaves. There's no woody component to them. So that's an herbaceous plant. This is a woody plant. So it's got hard stems and a trunk. Things like shrubs and trees are woodies, and the perennials are herbaceous usually.
And how did you learn so much about all of this?
So my background is in landscape architecture. I have a degree in landscape design. But I learned here actually a lot of that. I worked as an intern 6 years ago here under another head gardener. And it's a great opportunity for people to come and learn about plants and how to care for them.
Were you interested in plants as a child?
Yeah, I really was. I used to have a garden of my own even when I was this tall. So, you know, if there are any of you listening or watching that are interested in this, please come check us out and we can be a place to teach you about plants.
Hey, Albert, we have lots of questions about trees and I've kind of compiled them. Can I ask some tree questions from our students?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So one of the questions is, what is some of the rare trees that you have? And what are some of the oldest trees that you have?
Okay. Great questions. So we have some rare trees from the Asian continent, usually from China. And a lot of those can be found in the collection over here, which is the small tree collection. They're more obscure, small flowering trees. I can walk you by one as we go to the next step that I'll point out is one of our more rare trees. A lot of our older trees, like these, you'll see these colorful trees over here. Those are Japanese maples.
Japanese maple, wow.
The Japanese maple.
They produce maple syrup?
Not these, that's the sugar maple.
Got it.
The Japanese maple is an extremely slow growing tree. So to reach that size, it takes a really, really long time. Let me walk you around here. There's one tree that we're particularly fond of here. It's this tree in the background. It's got these big arms that reach out.
Oh yeah, this big one.
A gawky looking tree. It's a ginkgo, Ginkgo biloba.
Oh, that's ginkgo. I use ginkgo sometimes. It's good for your memory.
Yeah. So it has medicinal practices both in the East and the West. Some use the fruit and the seed, and others use the leaf. This is a female ginkgo, so it'll drop fruits every year. And is that how you know it's female, because it drops fruits? Yeah. Okay. So the males don't fruit, and the females do, and the fruit kind of has this bad smell, so a lot of people don't like to have female ginkgo. But I'll see the trunk on this tree is so old. I believe this tree to be at least 100 years old.
100 years old. Ginkgo biloba. Female tree.
Yeah. So let's walk over this.
A lot of students are also asking how many trees you guys have at the Arboretum.
So we count the number of woody plants. So that would include shrubs too. I'm not sure exactly how many are trees and how many are shrubs, but in total, we have around 3,000 different plants here. So there's a lot, and each one, I'll point out, has a tag. This is part of being an arboretum. We tag all of our trees, and it tells you what it is. It puts a scientific name, a common name, the plant family it's in, when it was planted, and also an identification number. So this was number 75 of these that year.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So students, if you come, you can take a look at the tags. And you can get some information on.
It'll tell you what the trees are.
Yep, what it is, when it was planted, all that good info.
Some other students were asking if you have bonsai trees or if you have any poisonous trees.
Bonsai or poisonous?
We don't have bonsai trees out here in the collection. They might have some in the greenhouse. Poisonous trees, I'm not sure of. This is a yew taxus, which is both poisonous and medicinal. I'm not sure about other poisonous trees. We do have the occasional poisonous plant that we grow, usually just for aesthetic or beautification purposes. If I see any along the way, I'll point them out to you.
How can you mentioned that plant was poisonous and medicinal. How can it be both?
So it depends on how it's ingested and how it's treated. I am by no means an expert in herbal medicines, but you know, some trees like willows, there's a derivative of the bark is used to make aspirin. But other trees, you know, like the ginkgo, as you indicated, some use the leaves. And, you know, if you were to come and just start eating branches, it might not bode well.
Might not be a good decision.
Yeah.
It might not taste good either.
I have a
Well, I'll
student
point
who
out.
asked what your favorite tree is.
Oh, my favorite tree? Well, that's an easy one for me. I am a huge fan of the sycamore tree, or Platanus americana. You've probably seen them on the streets. There's a relative called the London plane tree that's all over the streets of Baltimore, and it has real patchy gray bark. So look that one up. That's a favorite of mine.
Sycamore tree.
Yeah.
That is also my favorite tree, just so you know.
Ah,
Oh,
look at that.
God.
And I
Making
like
that
them because
connection.
they're good climbing trees, and
Exactly.
they grow near water. So you always know where water is because they've got to be close to water in order to do well. So you can find streams if you spot a line of sycamore trees. And then I have another student who asked, we have several students who are amazed that trees have gender, and they want you to talk more about that. Like, how do you know if it's a male or a female tree?
Yeah. So some of this might be getting above my head, but there are some trees that have male and female flowers on the same tree. We call those monoecious trees. If they have male and female flowers on the opposite tree, we call them dioecious. And the way that works is, you know, see these bees buzzing around, they visit a male flower, which produces pollen. And then they go and they land on a female flower, which doesn't have pollen necessarily, but it might have nectar to draw the insect in. And it leaves some of its pollen on the female part of the flower, which then turns into a seed or a fruit or both. So it's basically, we gender the flowers. There's probably a lot more to that than what I'm telling you, but that's in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's a good introduction. These are some great questions, students. Thank you all for asking these great questions.
We'll
Very
go through this
thought-provoking.
garden real quick.
All right.
So here are some of the Japanese maples on the property. There are some like 2,000 different kinds of Japanese maples, Acer palmatum. We have a handful represented here. So one of the things we do here is we really take care of a lot of the perennials and smaller gardens on the property. In the winter time, we do a lot of pruning in the collections.
And what does pruning mean?
So in trees like this Nordman fir, a lot of the times as a tree grows, it produces dead wood. So for whatever reason, they'll abandon a branch, or a branch, you know, might be broken in the wind, and we like to remove that dead wood. It's not completely necessary, but here we believe it both makes it a more beautiful tree, but also removes that area where an infection or an insect could affect the health of the tree. On the counter side of that, sometimes we want to leave dead, especially in the forest, because that's habitat for birds and insects and a food source for all kinds of life. But here in the gardens, we like to kind of take a little better care of those trees. Speaking of food sources, I'll just point this out. It caught my eye. This is a Chinese pistache tree. And I just wanted to point this out to you all. Here, this is the damage of a bird. It's a sapsucker. And it comes and it makes all these holes. And as the sap of the tree flows, it eats that sap. And if it goes all the way around the tree, it can kill it by what we call girdling it. Trees have vascular systems that transport nutrients from the leaves and the ground back and forth. And if you disturb that system, the tree can die. So luckily this is only on this side.
And how do you help protect trees when that happens?
Well, this one's really hard to solve. We don't do anything to, scare away wildlife, but one thing you could do is like hang some ribbon or something nearby that might frighten the bird away. Got it.
But it's just something that just might naturally happen, right?
Yeah.
The birds got to eat.
It's all part of it.
Yeah, for the nature. And what's the name of this garden again?
This is the Julie Smith and Three Sisters garden. There's actually two gardens, and we actually have a patron of this garden. So there's a family that helps support the maintenance here, and they come out and actually help us do some of the work.
Got it.
But most of the work done here is really done by volunteers of all ages.
And what's this tree here in the middle, and why is it surrounded by that, I guess, wire? Or what's that?
So we put a cage around this tree because we have deer that live on the property. And when we first plant trees, they're really vulnerable to deer eating the leaves, and the male deer will rub its antlers on the bark, which can be really destructive. And again, just like the bird damage, if you damage a tree all the way around, sometimes it can kill the tree. So we put the fence up for that. And your first question, this is a columnar sugar maple. So earlier you had asked about maple syrup.
Yes.
That comes from sugar maples. This is a sugar maple.
Oh, so this one can produce it.
Yeah. Now this is not your average sugar maple. It's columnar form. So over time, it's been bred by the industry professionals and nursery people to only get 3 feet wide and 50 feet tall, which is a very different form than your average sugar maple.
Got it.
This one is called monumental.
Monumental.
So the monumental is what we call a cultivar. It's acer, which is maple, sacrum, sugar. Monumental is the cultivar. Here's the dwarf conifer collection here. So this is where we put all of the conifers that are dwarf in size. Some of them look quite large, but they're actually full grown. Here's a fun one that Mr. Phillips, you and I talked about on your last
one of my
visit.
favorites.
This is a linden tree, Tilia cordata, little leaf linden. But this is also a very unusual form. We call this witch's broom. And for different trees, we're not sure what causes these growths, but you can see it has a really bizarre growth pattern with these bunchy growths. It's considered a disease or a problem in most trees, but here we find it actually kind of desirable and that it creates an interesting aesthetic.
Is this tree here still alive?
It is. So a lot of its lower limbs have died, That's because it's being shaded. So as trees grow big, sometimes their lower limbs are shaded out. Trees need light often to grow. So a lot of the lower limbs are actually dying. We call that self-pruning in a lot of conifers or pines. This tree is dead.
I see it is tilting to the right here.
Yeah, so we think it tilted to the right while it was living. But this is a great example of a tree we might leave in place as habitat and a food source for things like woodpeckers.
Will it ever fall over completely?
There's a chance it could, but with the lean going the direction that it is, you know, we feel confident right now that it's not going to fall on anyone. We do have arborists who are professionals at assessing tree health and tree structural safety. They would be the ones to tell us for sure if something like that is safe or not.
Got it. So you're a head gardener. You just mentioned arborists. What are some other professions that are here at the Arboretum?
So there's all kinds. One of which you'll get to see soon, which would be, you know, folks that work in the greenhouse, greenhouse technicians and managers, and folks who really grow the plants that we then plant on the property. Arborists, so the city forestry department is a big supporter of their public parks, us being one of them. They would come out and supply us with arborists who actually, you know, can climb trees and cut branches and also consult us. There's the chief horticulturist. So Miss Graham is in charge of the whole property, and that's really a management role. So there's parks management, there's yard supervisors, so folks who really take care of a lot of their grunt work here, you know, keeping the grass cut, plowing the snow, helping in so many different ways.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunities in public parks and in public gardens. If anyone really likes to be outside day in and day out and you know, learn about plants, this is a great place to come and learn. There's also lots of great local institutions for higher learning that you could go to. There's CCBC has a great horticulture program. Morgan State has a great landscape architecture program. And then you can study things like botany at the University of Maryland. So we're well situated if anyone has those interests.
Shamara, did you have a question?
Yeah, I thought we had a little pause. We had a couple of questions. Are you guys ready for that?
Yes.
Or we want? Oh,
Sure.
okay. So someone asked, what's the oldest tree out there? And are there animals at night or in the daytime?
Okay, so oldest tree. Honestly, we're not sure. You know, we have not just a collection of trees, but a whole forest of trees. And one of the ways to figure out the age of a tree is to take a core sample. So you would take out a really circular sample of the whole tree trunk. And then you could count the rings just as I was doing originally up top. And that would tell you the age. You know, some of the oldest trees in the world are in North America on the West Coast, those being the bristlecone pines. And, you know, they can have ages, gosh, you know, almost to 500 years.
500 years.
So there are some really, really, really old plants out there. We're not sure what the oldest tree is here. As far as animals go, we have all kinds of animals in the park. You know, the biggest here is probably a deer, and the smallest, you know, could be a mouse or a bird. We've got all kinds. We have fox. I've seen turkey before.
Turkey.
And a lot of things are active at night. So,
Shamara, you have something else?
Yeah, someone else asked, is any of the trees imported from different countries or all the trees grow in Baltimore?
that's a great question. So all the trees will grow here because they are growing here. But if you think of, latitude around the world, a lot of climate zones are the same in the United States as they might be in China or Europe. So if you follow the latitude that we're on, you can find a lot of plants that will also grow here, even though they're from other countries. Now, we don't import any plants from other countries. That's really challenging to do. I think places like the US Botanic Garden or the National Arboretum do things like that. Most of our plants we either grow here from cuttings or seed that we've sourced from other arboreta, or we purchase them in the industry, so at nurseries and things like that.
We had another really good question that I think a lot of students might be interested in, which is, can students volunteer and can they get service learning hours through their volunteers? Because of course that's a requirement, but it seems like a really pleasant place to volunteer.
Yes, yes, and yes. We would love to have volunteers. You can jump on our website and fill out a volunteer application.
Is it Cylburn.org?
Yep. Sylburn.org. We have a volunteer coordinator who can help you find the time and match you up with me. We do take the occasional school group. So if there's numerous students, and yes, it would count for service hours.
Yes, definitely get those hours. And
Yes.
like you said, Barbara, what a great place to come and be able to get those hours, especially during this time of year.
So I'm going to pass you all off unless you have further questions. So I like to think of this as the finale because you get to go into the greenhouses, which are usually off limits to the public.
Yes.
They produce plants for all over the city, including the Rawlings Conservatory. And these two fine folks will tell you all about it.
Hello.
Eva and Craig.
Hello.
You see the sign. This is off to the public. So y'all getting behind the scenes access.
So my name is Neva. I'm a horticulture assistant here at Cylburn Arboretum. Basically kind of the main grower here. And
I'm Craig Sherman, the orchid curator for Rawlings Conservatory, and the stock plants for the display house there, the orchid house, are here, and I take them over every week and redo the display there.
Wonderful. How long have you two been working here?
I've been here for 3 years, and you?
I've been here almost 5 years.
Got it. And how did you get, we can start with you. How did you get into this position?
So I went to school for graphic design actually, but I kind of got into horticulture just because I like pretty things. And I started in a garden retail center about close to 9 years ago. And then I went into a wholesale place. And then I also was part of Master Gardeners that kind of gave me the education that I needed. And then I got this job where I've kind of become a grower here.
All right. Thank you for that journey. How about you?
Well, I went to Institute of Applied Agriculture, and then I did several different jobs and went back to garden center. I worked in garden centers for about 30 years. And when this job opened, I saw it, I applied for it and got it. I've been in the Maryland Orchid Society on and off for 20 years and love it.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Thank you both for sharing your career journey. So what are we going to look at today?
We're going to look at our succulent and cacti section and agave section. I got to remember to talk to you. So we're going to walk around here first.
It's behind the scenes access, everybody. Getting a special look.
So here's an example of an agave, big, crazy, amazing plant.
And people use that as a sweetener, right?
They use
Is that the same
as a
agave?
They do.
Not this type. Okay.
Yeah. We have lots of different succulents here, jade.
Ooh.
We have some aloe plants, different varieties.
Very good for your skin.
Yep.
And where do all these plants come from?
So they are a mixture of a collection between the Rawlings Conservatory and just we kind of store them here currently. So they kind of go back and forth. And we also use them for propagation, or we make other babies from them. So for example, I could take this little guy off of that, put him in soil, and he would create roots out of the bottom. You wouldn't even have to barely water, just a little bit, and he would actually make a new plant pretty easily. So that's kind of what we do. And then we sell those plants at the conservatory. So we have a working relationship with them.
Okay.
So
these are all the succulents. You might see these at like Home Depot and different stores like that as well.
these are pretty cool. These are like a fuzzy type of succulent.
Yeah, it's kind of like a carpet.
Yeah. Pretty neat. There's so many different types. And then you have these nice cacti here, different types. I think this is a barrel cactus.
And we're getting close to a fan, so if it's a little noisy, it's because we're close to a fan. That's huge.
So this, here's another cool aloe plant. It's very spiky.
And what's this sheets in this water situation here?
So this is pretty cool. This is where we take cuttings, like succulent cuttings don't need this, but say for example, this is a sweet potato vine. We just cut this off of the plant and we stuck it in soil, and then you basically mist water over the leaves so that while it doesn't have roots, it's still getting water. Meanwhile, it produces roots down at the bottom. And so this is kind of an example of one that's almost done, and we're going to take it and plant it. And these are little sale plants that we would send over to the conservatory to be sold.
Beautiful. I know we're still going through the greenhouse, but Shamira and Barbara, are there any questions so far?
Hot and growing.
Shamir, I don't know if you have any questions. Part of the challenge is that we're having so many comments come in that it's hard to keep track. So I'm just going to ask the students, remind the students, please only type in the chat if you have a question that you're asking. The comments and things, I know like you guys are really excited, but just if we can keep it to questions, and that way we can ask the questions as they're coming in. That would be super helpful for us. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks,
Yes, thank you for
Barbara.
that.
I do have a question though, Albert. Someone wants to know, how long does it take to water all the plants?
How long does it take to water all of these plants?
That's a good question. I would say when our greenhouses are full, it takes about, if I just start at the beginning of the day, it takes about 8 hours to water
8 hours.
everything. Like say everything is dry.
It's like a whole school day or a working day.
It's like,
How you grow them?
Yeah.
especially if the house is like this full,
Mhm.
it takes a while.
All right, and I just want to remind everybody again, if you have questions, put them in the chat. Questions only, just so we can make sure we keep up with them. And let's make sure we keep our mics off and our videos off, just to help with connectivity and making sure everything is smooth. Thank you.
So this is our production greenhouse right now. These plants we got as little tiny babies, or we planted them from seed, a few from seed. And we got them from a grower. So we got them little, we put them in these pots, and then we've been feeding them. And I was going to show you guys how we feed our plants, because everybody likes to eat, right?
Yes, I'm hungry now.
So I'll show you what we use.
Look how beautiful these are. I can smell the plants. It's very aromatic.
Yeah, I know. So this right here is where we have our fertilizer, and it basically hooks up to the hose and basically gives it a small amount of what's in there. So it feeds them nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium in a certain amount, and makes them look really nice and green and makes them flower. Otherwise, they kind of get yellow and ugly.
And how do you know like what to feed them or how much to feed them?
It just depends. A lot of over the years, growers kind of know what to do. Like, for example, one way is like we'll feed them weekly with a certain amount. Some places feed them like every time they water, a constant feed. But we do it weekly here. And there's different amounts, like different plants like more or less of different nutrients. So, but these plants, we kind of do a general fertilizer program.
Okay. So have all of these been fed already?
I'm kind of in the middle of doing it actually. So I was going to show you what a plant would look like if it needed water. I don't know if you guys kind of know like what a plant kind of gives you a signal that it's like, I'm thirsty.
Maybe it's kind of wilted or hanging to the side.
So I don't know if we can kind of see. So plants talk to you.
Yes.
That's an example of like, hey, I'm thirsty. Would you give me a drink? And different plants kind of show that in different ways, actually. These guys kind of almost get grayish. Like they kind of change a little color and they get grayish when they want water.
What type of plant is this?
This is a begonia, a dragon wing begonia. So they all kind of show it in different ways, but mostly wilting is the common way.
Got it. And what kind of plants are these? These are really pretty.
These are salvia. This is rhythm and blues salvia. It has a particular smell to it. That might have been part of what you were smelling.
Oh, okay. Nice. How about these pretty flowers up here?
So these are actually, I grew these from seeds. They were kind of I wanted to use them. They might be used up in out here. We do hanging baskets. And so we might be using these petunias for something like that.
Petunias.
Yeah, these are they smell great. They're a popular plant.
Petunias. I'm getting my plant vocabulary today.
These are Vinca.
Vinca.
They're a summertime plant. They like it kind of dry and hot.
Vinca. All right.
And the stuff, just so you know, what we're growing here is basically, it goes to the conservatory. It either gets that or it gets sold, or it is used on the property for beds.
And what's the purpose of having everything in this greenhouse as opposed to just out in the open? Like, how does this greenhouse help?
The greenhouse helps us to be able to start earlier on crops, because really, if we had it outside, if we got a frost, you know, where you see frost on your car in the morning, it would actually kill some of these plants. So we couldn't really grow them to this size in that amount of time. They would have died outside, because these are viewed as annuals. A lot of them won't survive the winter here.
So this is more of like a controlled environment.
Yes, yes. And also you can, if you had to treat for bugs, you can do it in a controlled environment. So it's all those things. And you can fertilize here easier.
Got it. Barbara, you had a question?
I have a question that multiple people have been asking this entire time, which is about the corpse plant and whether you have one.
Corpse plant.
Yeah, we do. Actually, Craig, when we go meet the orchid curator, he's the one that had that plant, and he brought it to Rawlings recently, Rawlings Conservatory. But I think it's back with him. So you can go ask him.
Let's see if we can find that corpse plant for you all. We'll see.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah. I didn't do it.
Oh, just real quick. So this is an example of a leaf cutting that we do. So basically you can take a leaf of a succulent and actually put it in soil, and it will decide that it would like to grow roots and make another plant. And so that's considered a leaf cutting. So this guy didn't do that, but this guy, whoops, you can see it made babies. It made new plants with some roots. And so we're going to take these and use them for a project coming up for the conservatory. And you can see this is kind of the same thing. And some are successful and some are not. This guy didn't really make it, but you can see the new babies coming from those leaves.
Wow. So they can just reproduce that easily, huh?
Yeah. This is Craig. They were asking about the corpse flower.
You have a high interest in the corpse.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you have it?
It is dormant now.
It's
Okay.
It is dormant. It should put up another growth later on this year.
Okay.
And then we'll go through several different years of growing the foliage before it builds up and finishing the flower again.
Got it. So not right now, but maybe another time. The
Yes.
corpse. Okay. Thanks. What's next?
All right, so my primary job here is to grow orchids and interesting plants to put over the conservatory, Rawlings Conservatory. That's primarily what you're seeing here. This is displayed this week. A lot of orchids that you see are epiphytes.
And what does that mean?
Epiphyte is not a parasite. Epiphyte means it grows upon. So it's growing on a tree. It's up in the air. And the way they have learned to compete in the jungle is not to grow on the ground where the light is low, but to learn to grow in a tree, up in the moss, in the hammocks of the tree, with all the foliage, and compete up there for the light. So what that means is they don't really rely on being in the soil. Here's one right here. We can literally see it's in some Spanish moss, give it lots of air and a little bit of some actual water when I hit it with a hose. This is water, and if you look at the roots, they're white right now. When a raindrop hits, it literally goes into the plant. And if you watch, it's going right into the actual, it's changing color. So what it's doing is it's grabbing a hold of the water before it can get to the further down in the canopy. So it grabs a hold of it, holds on to it right then. That's the whole goal, is to be able to get the water while it hits you. And of course, it's raining several times in a rainforest a day, so it does a very good job of that. But there are many different types of orchids. And here's just an overall view of a bunch of different types. Almost everything you're seeing here is a hybrid. This one right here is not. This is a species. This is Oncium sphacillatum. And I grew this for a certain purpose. But even with this one here, since they want to be well drained, this one's growing in a pot with no soil, no media at all. And those roots are just essentially they're getting watered 3 times a week when it's hot, twice a week when it's cool season.
And you mentioned the word hybrid. For those who don't know, what does that word hybrid mean?
Hybrid means that it is one species crossed onto another species, or that would be a hybrid, or that hybrid crossed onto anything else. So if it is a species that exists in the jungle, when it comes to orchids, what orchids will do is they get their pollen on them when the insect leaves the flower, not when it goes in. So it's getting the pollen onto it when it leaves, and then hopefully takes it to another orchid plant somewhere. And that ensures cross-pollination. Then the young ones will be more varied, and they have a better chance of growing higher up in the tree or somewhere where it's more airy. So that's why you have so many different types of orchids out there. There are many different types. And we even have some that are actually not epiphytes, but grow in the ground that are in bloom this week. You go to the different parks, they're very hard to see. You have to look it up. It's Cypripedium macaulay. It's a pink slip orchid, and I saw them last weekend just walking in the woods around here.
And so you would find those in neighboring parks and things like that?
Parks, and where where the soil has not been disturbed for a long time, where there's rotting trees and things a little bit older like that. And this is the week when the dogwood flowers drop to the ground, the petals drop to the ground, and usually the week that you can find them. You have to look, do some research on what they look like and walk through the woods and go slow. And once you grasp the color, once you'll find many of them.
So you got to do some nature walking.
You've got to do some nature walking. This is the week to do it. That's
Yes, and it's beautiful weather.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So there's all different types. This one here actually is a species, Confidio loei. And what that means is when it's a species is that the insects on the mountain, the valley, wherever it grew, kept going back over and over to that one plant, that one group of plants, and it evolved to look like that.
Is that what those little dots are?
Well, that's just something that for some reason attracts the insect. So you look at that and you're thinking, geez, how does it work? Well, the insect that pollinates this one flower. And many times there's just one insect that will pollinate the flower. If that insect's missing or that flower is missing, it's broken the chain. But it evolved because in that area, that's the way they liked the flower to look. That insect designed that flower over time.
And how much time do you think that took? Was it like thousands, millions of years?
Yeah, hundreds of years for sure. Yes, it depends on how far you want to go back. But when you think different species are related, they're related. But that is actually a species. This is a hybrid. This is a slightly different genera, but that's a hybrid. And you can see there how much different that looks. No spots on that one at all.
Nope.
Yep. And you can see here for the insect, it wants to go literally right on that landing pad. It's very clearly marked where it's supposed to land.
It kind of looks like an insect, a little.
It almost looks like
a bee or something. Maybe?
Yep. And they say that when it comes to the Oncidium orchids, these, they believe that bees will try and hit them because they're attracted to them, either to drive them off or whatever, but it seems to work. It's a very common orchid out in nature.
Wow.
So when it comes to that whole process, each lip, so we have 2 petals and a lip. That's a modified petal. Then we have 3 sepals, and the sepals are the green things on the back of the strawberry. So you can see the lines. It's very clear for that insect where it's supposed to go and land.
It's like, come on in.
It says, here's the landing pad. You don't have to go somewhere else. Here it is.
Yep.
So when the insect goes in there, it literally lands on it and has to be the right weight for it to open up for the size of the insect. When it goes in and when it pulls back out, there's the pollen all on the thing. It wasn't in there when it went in it when it came out. When it goes back in the second time, which is another flower, because there's no use in going in the same flower, when it goes back out and comes out,
it's gone.
It's stuck back in the ovary of the plant. So that's how that works. So it's trying to actually trick an insect to go to a different flower and carry the pollen.
And that's why bees are so important.
Bees are very important. And there's even something called an orchid bee. The orchid bee will go lowland and will get some scent from the flower, rub it on him, fly up to the top of the mountain, find another orchid that smells nice, mix the two, make a little cocktail, and come down and go to the female and say, did I get it right? So if one of those orchids goes extinct, that bee can go extinct because it can't make the right cocktail. So it really is a lot of dependence on different things in the jungle that we don't even know about.
Yes, this history is super important.
Yep.
Any questions? I'll just pause real quick for any questions that anyone has. I know that was a lot of information, very informative. Samara, Barbara, any questions?
Hey, Albert. So just looking at the chat right now, no questions, but someone did say the flowers are all beautiful here.
Yes, they're super beautiful. And I'm so fortunate that we all had a chance to get this behind the scenes look. If you come here, you won't be able to come into the greenhouse, but certainly you can enjoy this experience today and tell everyone about it.
Okay, so no questions right now.
Okay, cool. And what's next?
And
take a peek in here, right?
I did send out just for an interesting thing, some of the carnivorous plants we have here. Some years we do a show. I'm going to show up to see what COVID going on, what's happening here, but this is a Nepenthes plant, which is a tropical pitcher plant. And this is a hardy pitcher plant, which is one of the ones that grows on the East Coast here. It takes the winter, comes up each spring. They're both tall pitcher plants. They're very complex. On this one, eats primarily on flying insects. And here's an old flower on it
Oh,
here.
so these actually eat insects.
They actually eat insects. Yes. Yep. They actually draw the insect in. It slips down into that throat, and it doesn't. It's trapped. You can't get out. The wings are folded up.
If you put your finger in there, will it
They
try to
will
take a
not
bite?
move. They don't move. Is what they don't do.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to this one over here, this one we have two different types of traps on it. We have a really big one where it would hopefully be on the ground, and then insects climbing up have this little snow fence. It stops them from going around in circles, kind of directs them to go up here, and this is so slippery they fall into that. There's a nectar that is produced here, and that's the one that's on the ground. And on the same plant, we have one that is more of an adult pitcher, and it doesn't have the snow fence as much. And that's to draw in flying insects.
How many insects might that eat a day? Or
It actually depends. When the nectar is going well, if ants find it, it can get thousands of ants in a day because they're all going to the same thing. When it comes to flying insects, not as many.
And those, by eating the insect, it helps it grow and stay
Yes,
nourished.
it's getting its nutrients. So these grow in very nutrient poor areas. This one over here grows in a bog. So therefore, it's very hard for things to actually crawl to it. But the flying insects are what are designed to go into that, or after that. We all know Venus flytrap.
Oh yeah, I've seen those in like movies.
Yes.
It's a
Okay.
Venus flytrap, everyone.
Yep. And you can see here where it's called an insect earlier.
Oh wow, it's an insect actually in there.
And you know, they are plants that people get often, and people don't keep going because they're perennial. They want to hold dormancy. They don't get that, they kind of die out.
Is it gonna chew that insect up?
It already has eaten the insect.
Okay.
There are two little hairs on each side. If a raindrop hits it, it doesn't close.
Mhm.
What it does is either one of the hairs or any of the other hairs, if they're hit within 10 seconds of each other, there's a little clock that's keeping track of what's going on. And it will close in. So if we go and we hit the thing once, nothing happens. Well, I hit it twice.
Wow.
So it actually does.
Y'all see it actually closed. Wow.
It catches the insect. But they're perennial, so if you decide to try one, you want to give it like rainwater is the best, not chlorinated or water with salt in it. And you want to give it a cold dormancy. Put it in the window and keep it moist.
I might have to get one for my house. During the summertime, I get a lot of gnats when I keep fruit out.
Yep.
So maybe it'll eat the gnats.
We have a few questions. They had learned from the when we were with the trees that the trees have gender. There's some questions about whether flowers also have gender in the same way, or they're male and female orchids.
Great question. Do these flowers have gender?
Yes, some of them are when they are male or female. That's called dioecious. Some orchids are male or female. Most orchids aren't. They have both parts within the flower. But there are a few odd ones that are either male or female, in which case that insect has to be drawn first to the male plant. And then also that insect has to have an interest to go to the female plant. All the ones you've seen here, though, are not dioecious. They have both sexes within the flowers.
Okay. All right. So it depends.
Yep.
And then I was wondering, so these plants that normally eat insects, probably if they weren't in a greenhouse, there'd be more insects around that would just be climbing into them. But do you have to feed them insects because you're taking care of them?
Generally speaking, they do pretty good on their own because the greenhouses do have open vents. So already they have insects in them. This year, they're just opening up. They already have insects in them. Sometimes what you'll find, like I don't know if you can get a picture of this one. We caught a hornet the other day. See it way down in his throat down there. So I know that because I heard it buzzing inside the actual flower. Yes. Here's a one from one of the hardy ones from last year that I just cut off and cleaned up a little bit. All the way down here to the end, you can see all the dried insects that are laying down in the bottom of it. See all the insects? So that's been in the greenhouse. That
So
did not go
peace.
out of the greenhouse. And this, of course, the further down you go, the more insects you find.
It's like a all-you-can-eat buffet. of
So you see,
insects.
they're very successful at doing what they do.
This is amazing.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Any other questions, Barbara?
They want to know what plants you grow that you can eat.
Oh, do you grow any plants here that people can eat?
Well,
Well, we have vegetable plants.
yes.
Okay.
So this is for a program called City Farms that we are helping. Basically, we sell to people that have community gardens in the city. And so obviously there's peppers, tomatoes, we got some herbs too. So those kind of things that produce fruit. I'm trying to think of any plants that we have to straight up eat.
Not what we really specialize in.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not what they specialize in.
But yeah.
We have some other questions. So one of them is, what inspired you to work here?
It's a great question.
For me, I would say it was a mixture of things. Like I said, I'm an artist, so my background is that. I think getting into horticulture is kind of a mixture. Like my dad had that background, and so all of a sudden I realized at some point in my life that I really loved plants and I loved taking care of them. And I think just the beauty of them really attracted me. And then trying to take care of them properly was also cool, and learning about all the things that they do. I forgot the question.
Just your inspiration for working here,
Oh.
which you were explaining perfectly.
Okay, my inspiration. Yeah, and I love one thing that I get to do here too is I get to help design some of the garden beds. That is really fun for me. Like it kind of takes my graphic design background and my love of plants now and kind of puts it together.
You're kind of like a plant artist.
Yeah, that's kind of what it's so fun for me.
You gotta put that on your resume.
Yeah, I enjoy it so much. It's
wonderful.
a lot of work. It's you're hot in the summer. You're warm in the winter though. But yeah, it's a hard job physically, but I also realized I didn't like being chained to a computer all day long, which in most jobs now, that's kind of what you
Yeah,
do.
especially during COVID, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, in your field.
So I just like being out in nature and being active too, not just sitting all day. So it's all those things together that really makes me happy to be doing what I'm doing.
Thank you for that. And how about you? What's your inspiration for working here?
I grew up on a farm when I was a child with both sets of grandparents, and we had apple orchards and berry patches and all kinds of things going on. So all my life I've been growing one thing or another. Here my sister said to me, she says, "Why don't you do something interesting?" And so I started getting into the house plants, and it never stopped. The more bizarre it was, the more I enjoy the challenge.
It sounds like definitely with these plants that you just showed off.
Yeah.
Definitely bizarre. Okay. Thank you for sharing your inspiration.
Sure.
All right. Is that the end of the greenhouse? All right. So we're gonna walk out of the greenhouse now. I hope you all enjoy being able to see the inside. We're not quite done yet, but we're just gonna make our way to the outside. I always forget how to get out. Okay, this is the way. Lead the way.
We got to come to the greenhouse too.
Yes, yes, this is wonderful. Behind the scenes footage. This is great. And again, students, thank you all for those questions. You all asked some very thought-provoking questions that put folks here on the spot in a good way, especially that last one, inspiration. So we're gonna walk out, and we have about 10 to 15 more minutes, and then we'll be wrapping up. Let's walk out of this greenhouse. Look how big this one is. This is massive.
And there were
banana
questions
leaf.
about tropical plants and island plants and things like that. So I think maybe we saw some tropical plants as you were walking by.
Yeah, definitely. Even some of the ones that he talked about earlier were tropical plants, some of them. Definitely. All right, thank you for opening that up. We are back outside of the greenhouse. And this is a view of it from the outside. So when you come here, you can definitely look at it from the outside, but you won't be able to enter.
Mr. Phillips, we were talking about volunteers before and volunteer opportunities.
Yes. So obviously, I think we have some students, maybe some teachers and others who are interested in coming here and in volunteering. How would they go about that?
That would be wonderful. So like Mr. Craig said, you can go on Cylburn, CYLBURN.org and volunteer. But I also want to see, like, here's our trails group. They just finished up. So every Tuesday morning they come out and they do work on the
Way
trails.
down there.
Them in the green shirts and the green. If you volunteer, you get a cool shirt too.
Nice.
So that's always fun. And there's other opportunities as well. Even if there's other classes, like maybe a media class, and people want to come here and take pictures, like, or little videos, and we could work together and you can post them on social media through us. We would love that, right? New perspective. You could like be a guest Instagrammer for us for a week, and that would be super fun.
Yes, and for any students, I know we have some elementary and middle school students on here, but we may even have a few high school students. If they're like, hey, I want to see if there are any jobs or any other ways they can get involved, how would they look into that?
I think most of the jobs actually would be, we don't have any job openings right now, but Baltimore City. So you
got it.
That way.
Okay.
But also we had mentioned, since we are talking about tree site for the elementary school students, we do have our nature breaks available. And this next segment's about trees. So that would be fun if you'd like to share that with our nature in your neighborhood nature breaks.
Yes, and is that information on your website?
Yes, and you can reach me actually through our website. And again, I'm Heather Rosenthal.
Yes, and everyone, I don't expect you to memorize everything that we share. I'll definitely be shooting out a follow-up email after this event, and including links and things like that for you to look at as well. Okay. Wonderful. Any other words or parting words before we depart?
Come see us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
There's nothing better than sitting under a tree on a hot summer day, right? And getting that natural shade and cool and just come and enjoy.
Absolutely. So let me flip this camera around real quick. Haven't seen y'all since earlier, so it's good to see everybody again. But thank you so much for embarking on this experience with us. This is something new. This is like a pilot. We didn't know how the tech and everything was going to work, but everything seemed to work out perfectly. And I really appreciate teachers, principals, other folks for emailing me and causing us to really change the Zoom link, because we wanted to include more people to participate. So a few things before we wrap up. One, as I mentioned, we will be sending out a follow-up email. And in that email is going to include some of the things that you all got sent already. So one is the survey. I just saw somebody put in the chat. Please, students, complete the survey. We want to know what your thoughts are, right? Like whether you enjoyed it, whether you didn't. What are some things that were memorable? What are some things that you wish you would have learned or saw more about? We want to hear all of that. So please let us know on that survey. Please complete that. Teachers, I will be sending out a document for you to complete just to make sure that we have attendance. We should have attendance since we switched to this webinar platform to be able to see everyone who attended. But if we don't, just be on the lookout for a document. I'll just be asking you to, let us know what students you invited to be here. Let me see if there's any other things I want to mention before we head out. Yeah, so the survey, please complete that and be on the lookout for the follow-up email. Again, this was great. This is wonderful. This could not happen without you all. And we look forward to having more events like this in the future. So if there's something a place that's connected, especially to one of our CTE pathways, a career, something that you want to learn about, let us know and we'll be in touch. Again, on behalf of the work-based learning team, the Office of College and Career Readiness with Baltimore City Public Schools, thank you And I'll be sure to send out a recording of this once it's available. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you.
Thank you,
Arboretum
Albert.
staff.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Susan.
Thank you all so much. Be well.